This panel is titled My Favorite Bartram Moment in 10 Minutes. During the Q&A portion, Heather said something along the lines of, if your roots are rotted or rotting, you're going to die. And in a certain sense, these are our roots, and they are not rotting at all. They are strong and healthy. Having said all that, I don't relish having to cut off any of these speakers after 10 minutes, but I will. And up first, we have Sam Carr. You all have heard Sam barking at you repeatedly today. Sam has served as the president of the Bartram Trail Conference from 2018 to 2022 and was instrumental in reviving the Florida Bartram Trail Society, which you see the fruits of that all around us today, including marking the many Bartram locations in Putnam County and establishing the annual Bartram Frolic in Palatka. We saw some footage from that last night. Extraordinary. So welcome, Sam. 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm glad you said 10 minutes because I'll try. So this is my favorite Bartram moments, and obviously we've had so many, but the one that comes to mind the most is as Dean and I were going out and finding all of the Bartram sites in Putnam County. We have now 33, I believe, that we've identified and so forth. And so, some of these sites, as Dean mentioned earlier yesterday, you can guess, we know where Palatka is, so that's not a big deal. And we know where Rollstown is, so that's not a big deal. We know where Willaca Spring is, that's not a big deal. But then when you get off the path, that it gets a little fuzzy. So we were looking for, there's a dialogue on December the 27th. Bartram's left the lower store and went straight to Johnson's, what they called Johnson Spring at the time. And so the Bartrams got out of their bateau and started hiking. And so they were looking for a large spring that they knew was there. And so they started hiking down the eastern bank of the St. Johns River, over Reel, over Dale, and all through the woods and all this, that, and the other. And so they found a couple of springs in there. And so being good Bartram stewards, Bartram Trail stewards as we were, we wanted to find them. Okay, and so we got in our kayaks and we launched there near Johnson Spring, and so we paddled up where Johnson Spring is now. It's called, what's it called now, Dean? It's still there, but it's not called Johnson Spring. So and so Bartram would have parked this boat there, and they would have started walking. So we paddled by. Okay, we got that one. So the next one we see on our map would be Satsuma Spring. So we paddled, on our way to Willaca Spring, which we knew where it was, and we paddled there. Couldn't find it, so we kept going. And then I remember when I was a kid, we knew where Nashua Spring was, so we identified Nashua Spring, and then we paddled on down to Willaca Spring, came back looking again for Satsuma Spring. Now, we had GPS coordinates from Water Management where that spring is. So, and we're paddling along the bank looking for this, and we never found it. So we paddle on down and get out of the water. Still can't find Satsuma Spring, and lo and behold, we launched. And I said, I know some people down here, so I'll give a phone call to my friend Jim, and hopefully he knows. Maybe if somebody, he lives right here, maybe he knows somebody that has a spring in their backyard, basically. And so I did. I called Jim up, and he says, well, yeah, Perry Taylor has a spring in her backyard. I said, well, do you and not only that, but we went to the fish camp right next to it. And fish camp had a parking lot, had a fence and everything. And we're sitting there looking at the GPS, and it's right here, but you couldn't see it. And so, and also he says, yeah, I'll meet you there. So within 5 minutes, we met my friend Jim at Perry Taylor's place. And Perry met us there. And we walked down, and there was Satsuma Spring. Amazing. And this is from our website, actually. And so when you find something like this, it's really incredible because think about it. You're reading John Bartram's journal about 400 or 500 yards from the river, under the foot of which issued a large fountain big enough to turn a mill, warm, clear water, very offensive taste, and smelt like bilge water or the washings of a gun barrel. The sediment that adhered to the trees fallen therein looked of a pale white or bluish cast, and with like milk mixed. That's a pretty good description, right? So here we are, we're standing on the banks of Satsuma Spring and reading this. So clear water, offensive taste, smelt like bilge water, or the washings of a gun. And as we're going, what? Okay, we know the location, we know what it's supposed to look like. I can even smell it. And so we're sitting there talking to Perry and saying, Perry, can you, we're all agreeing, I can smell the sulfur. There's no doubt about it. We're in the right spot and everything. Perry says, well, I've lived here for quite a while. I don't smell it. Then, and of course I said, well, then who farted? Because by God, you could definitely smell it. And then come to find out, this is one of the most highly concentrated sulfur springs in the area. Actually, 3 springs altogether are very highly concentrated sulfur, which comes from the way that the aquifer empties in. So this has become my favorite Bartram find, obviously. Not only that, but Perry Taylor treasures it so much along with us. In fact, as we really tried to help her do that, in the past 12 months, she has declared this as a environmental conservation area, which will never be developed, and it'll always be Satsuma Spring there, which is really, really wonderful. And it's just, and when we had Kathryn and Tom Halleck and all those folks down for the first time, I mean, people have shed tears over being able to tell where this is Jim right here. This is actually the day I think we discovered Satsuma Spring. That's Jim with the white hair there. And that's Perry and her dog, Murphy, in the back. She has 3 full-size poodles, and they play in the water all the time. So when you come down there, she has sticks on the ground that you have to throw them in the water and all that kind of good stuff. It's really wonderful. So that's what it looks like. Now, if you want to look at what it looks like underneath, this is a healthy Satsuma Spring here. You can see the aquatic grass that's growing and how clear the water is. It's really cool. So that's another shot. And again, this is what Satsuma Springs looked like to us. And so when Thomas was there and Kathryn, we brought we had our conference and all down there. It's really an emotional moment, because there is no doubt when you're standing at the headwaters of that spring and you can see it, you can see what the water looks like, you smell it, and the topography exactly matches. Billy and John were there. There's no doubt about it. So that really made a big deal for us, and it's been an emotional thing. It's one of our favorite places to go and everything. And Perry is really good. She has always allowed us to get in there, which is really wonderful. This is one of my favorite shots here. This was on the Paddle, Florida trip that went from Salt Springs all the way to Palatka on one of their trips. And so we concentrated on Bartram that whole trip. And also here we are, soaking in the sulfur springs and all. The next spring down was Nashua Spring, and actually made money by shipping sulfur spring water to New York. And they had a train station there, right there. So that was my very special Bartram moment, but I had a couple of more, okay? So can anybody tell me where I am, Beverly?
It's
Where?
10 minutes up.
Is it?
Amelia.
Right, Amelia Island, and what am I looking at? Cumberland, right? Cumberland Island, and so we're there, and
St. Mary's Sound.
St. Mary's Sound, exactly. And so we're there with Beverly and Brad, and we're sitting there trying to figure out where are all the Bartram sites here, and we're sitting there looking at this thing. So Beverly and I asked Brad, well, Brad, okay, so the Bartram, he would have gotten out here, and then Beverly asked a question. Well, when he got off, what did he do then, and how did he see Fernandina Beach and the area there. And also Brad was explaining, okay, well, he met with Mr. Egan, okay, and Mr. Egan and he got on horseback and they rode all over the Fernandina Beach and everything. And so we're going, really, that is really cool. And about that time, we look around and there was Billy Bartram and Mr. Egan riding their horses down the beach. It was awesome. What a moment. I thought, I'm dreaming. But it happened at that moment. Another incredible Bartram moment. Another Bartram moment, so we showed this slide. Miss Lerb is her name here in St. Augustine, and this is the drawing of Ahaya and Puggy. And so Dean and I were doing some reconnoitering here in St. John's, in St. Augustine, and we happened to go into the Casa Monica Hotel across the street from where we're standing right now, and hanging on the wall was this enormous painting. Isn't that amazing? It really is beautiful. And then so we were hoping that would be here for y'all to take a look at. But this is your only chance because we don't know where it's gone to. It's gone. Okay. And so my last Bartram moment, and for those of you that go on our bus tour tomorrow, this is one of my favorite Bartram moments too. Lo and behold, does anybody know what this is?
I do.
Okay. So Mike and I were asked to go to the Rotary Club and give a Bartram presentation there, and they met in the Yacht Club of Anastasia Island. And so we're there, and we got there early, and we go out there back to look, and there's a kiosk there, Watchtower. Okay, and so they had a picture of it, the whole 9 yards. I said, wow, Bartram, I know, went to something up here. So we called Dean on the phone while we're there. Dean's sitting there reading it to us. Yeah, he was there. They spent the night. And by the way, it tells us how many ladders are there and how tall it is, and they walked the whole thing. And so here we are at a Bartram site. And so there's Mike up in the corner. So I walked down to take a look at the coquina ruins of the Bartram Lighthouse. And there, carved in one of those coquina things, WB 1765. I'm lying. But we need to go do that, don't we? We really do. Really do. And so, and this is my last Bartram moment, I swear it is. So as we're developing this thing, we had to go find the lower store. And so we get in our kayaks, we paddle up to Bim Wilson's backyard, which is, we know it as Stokes Landing now. And so Bim Wilson comes out, and I said, Bim, we want to dock our kayaks, and we want to talk to you about the Spalding's lower store. Well, I won't shoot you today. That was his response to us. So, and also I get out, and we're talking to him, and he knew all about it because when he was a teenager, in the 1950s, the professor from the University of Florida's Natural History Museum over there came over and reconnoitered the Spalding's lower store there and dug up all this good stuff and took it to Gainesville. And so we all wanted it back. But anyway, so Ben's sitting there talking to us, and he says, about it, and he knew all about it. Goes up there and shows us these are the main trees. That's the log cabin where I was born, and all this, that, and the other. It's really cool. And then he says, do you want to see the treasure map? And I said, what? And this was a treasure map given to him by some archaeologists who were there. And sure enough, that is a drawing by the Spanish in 1791, right? When they retook over the thing, and that is the treasure map of Spalding's lower store from 1791. Isn't that cool? And so then I call up Kathryn. I said, Kathryn, what for do I have here? And so Kathryn goes, and I believe it was Tulane University, wasn't that the one who found it at the Library of Congress, the original, and so forth. It was actually documented. Those are my Bartram moments. And it's just so much fun. It really is. Okay.
Sam interpreted the moment singular very liberally. All right. Up next, Mike Adams is a conservation ecologist, researcher, educator, and author, and an active member of the Bartram Trail Society of Florida. He brings natural history to life with his colorful and exciting portrayals of colonial naturalist and explorer William Bartram. Welcome, Mike.
Well, welcome. I'm thrilled to be up here today. Some of you may know me in a different capacity, but you're not getting Billy Bartram today. You're getting Mike Adams. So I'm thrilled to be up here. And like Sam, I had trouble with one Bartram moment. So I was able to at least limit mine to a trilogy. So that's what I'm going to show you today. And this is really appropriate because we were just talking about this. This was one of my special moments up at the gardens. You ladies may recognize this spot. A few years ago, I was working on a documentary up there, and I was fortunate enough to get one of the last tours from Joel Fry. Amazing tour. And you can see what's blooming in the foreground there. It was quite an amazing trip. I was walking around, and I told Sam and Dean this. My hair on my neck was standing up. Amazing. So anyway, that's the Franklinia. And when you see the house, you see this carved in stone by John Bartram, quite impressive. And you wonder, what was the man thinking in those days and everything like this? These stones were all mined from local quarries not far from where the garden was. Of course, it's in the suburbs of Philadelphia today, but it was in a town called Kingsessing 300 years ago. And this is what John Bartram came up with. This is a map that I found, and it's really curious because you see the date on there, about 1758, and my reference wasn't telling me whether John drew this or Billy. I'm thinking Billy would have only been 19, so I'm suspecting John probably made this sketch. But one thing that's really cool, if you look on that drawing, you see in the upper left there, both sides, upper left and upper right, there's a stairway. I stood on those stairs. Really cool. Really cool. So that's one of my Bartram moments in the trilogy, is going to the garden. Here's another one. This one was just this past spring. And it's the London Museum of Natural History. And I'm actually doing a follow-up project that a couple of our 4 founding members here, Ken and Janice Mahaffey, got started back in 2013. And what my wife and I did, we set up a meeting with the curator over there, a lady named Andrea Hart, and she was a great host. And what we're trying to do is, all the artwork that we've been talking about for the last 2 days? Well, they're the keepers of the artwork, the original artwork, and that's what my wife and I were looking at. The original artwork from William Bartram, and journals and maps and everything like this. It was quite amazing indeed. That Natural History Museum is equivalent to our Smithsonian, for those of you that have never been there. And then just like, I think a month before we were there, you've heard of the famous naturalist, David Attenborough? He does documentaries. Well, he had just done a documentary there the month before on all the extinct animals of the world that are in that museum. It was really cool. It was really cool. But I come to find out that guy's 99 years old and he's still doing documentaries. That's motivation for any naturalist right there to keep on chugging. Yep. And there we are. You see the upper left there, you might recognize the print that I'm looking at. That's not a print, that's the original. Franklinia, folks, the original artwork right there. Quite amazing. I was getting choked up at that point. In the middle there's my wife, who's also in charge, co-in charge of the auction here today. Carol and Linda are doing a fine job in the auction today. Don't forget to make your final bids this afternoon. She's got one that has the imperial moth and the Savannah pink sabbatia flower. He probably did that one around Savannah, Georgia, I would guess, maybe Darien. Franklinia, we know where he got that. And then the bottom one that I'm looking at with a magnifying glass is the Alachua Savannah map that Billy sketched in 1774. And that's just over here west of where we are here in St. Augustine, near a place called Gainesville. Some of you may have heard of it. It's now called the Paynes Prairie State Park. This was the Alachua Savannah. And then probably my biggest Bartram moment, and I tried to figure out how I was going to say this, Sam, and the best way I could come up with was a continuum of education. You can read it right there. Over 18 years of living history, we've reached 6,000 youths and about 3,000 adults. Now that's a pretty good accomplishment. Pretty good accomplishment. You photographers, you'll recognize your own photography here. But that one on the left, that was taken over at the Florida Folk Festival. Take a look at that young man's eyes. That's a Bartram moment right there. And the one on the right-hand side, that was just this past year at the Lullaby the Rivers Festival over here at the St. Augustine Amphitheater, which, by the way, is only about 2 miles from here. And that's right near a Bartram site where they mine the coquina for the Castillo de San Marcos right here in St. Augustine. If you're looking for something to do, if you're going to stick around town for a couple days, there's a lot of things to see around here. A lot of Bartram sites. Incredible. Everything's really close. You're going to be on a bus tour tomorrow. Those of you that are going, if Sam can squeeze you on, you're gonna be well rewarded, I promise you. This was another one that we did. You may recognize this gentleman, Dick France, a world-renowned herpetologist right here in Melrose, Florida. And we gave a talk over at their library over there a couple years ago. Great talk. People are always so engaging. This was more of an adult group, but it was really fun. And what Dean was talking about yesterday, that's kind of like why we're in this organization so much, is the fun. It's really amazing. And as a living history guy, Robert Wilson can talk about this. He can vouch for this as well. He's our Job Wiggins. It's all about the fun, especially with the youngsters. Really cool. Paynes Prairie, the Great Alachua Savannah. This was a couple years ago. This is our living history crew right here. Native American over there, the famous, world famous Jim Sawgrass, portraying the Long Warrior. The only reason why he's not here today, he's in Italy this week, demonstrating to the Italians what Native Americans look like from America. So that's how famous he is. You see Robert Wilson over there behind Billy Bartram. We were actually reenacting the naming of Pukpugee by Ahea right there at the Alachua Savannah at their Indian village called Cuskawilla. This is just at the Folk Festival a couple months back. This is our whole crew. This is the full Monty right here. You see Sam Carr. He's not singing there. He's narrating. He's narrating, but we have our troubadours there, Lee Pinkerson and Jim Snyder. They do these Bartram songs that are really fun, and it really illustrates the stories that we tell in conjunction with the song, and it really gives out a good message to the audience when we're doing this. I was just talking about this one. This is Billy over at the St. Augustine Alligator Farm, again about 2 miles out here towards the St. Augustine Lighthouse where Sam was talking about those coquina slabs. I was with him that day. That was really fun, Sam. This was a talk that I gave to a bunch of summer campers. It was really fun. I had a captive audience of middle school age children, and that's a really tough age. Those of you that are in education, middle school is tough. I'd rather talk to a second grader any day. But middle school, really tough. That was a fun morning. And it was so much fun, they're not booing here. They're asking for an encore. They're asking for an encore. And those of you that have seen our Living History program with Billy Bartram, I always close out my presentations with a turkey call. And that's what we're doing there. Always fun indeed. Here's some photo credits here. You can see. And that's it. Matt, I think I made the time.
Last, certainly not least, we have Kathryn Braund. Now, when I introduced myself earlier, she insisted that I not sell myself short. And then she gave me this introduction to her. And when you hear this, and if you know what she's done for this field and for all this stuff, you'll recognize how ridiculously inadequate this is. She holds herself very short. She is the Hollyfield Professor of Southern History Emerita at Auburn University, served as president of the Bartram Trail Conference from 2000 to 2010, and continues to serve on the BTC board. This is the kicker. She has published on the Southeastern Indians and William Bartram. All right.
Thank you, Matt. And my first observation will be that you Florida boys can't count. All right. But really, it's funny because I wrote my remarks so I would be sure and stay within the 10 minutes. And I start off by saying, how is it possible to have one favorite Bartram moment? And the answer is simple, it isn't. And so you guys have proved me correct on that. So since everybody else had multiple moments, I'll add one. I was only going to do one, but I'll add another one. And that is my favorite Bartram moment is seeing people put down a bid at the Fothergill silent auction. So get your pocketbooks in there because academic people who are working on Bartram scholarship, it helps fund their travels to repositories. It gives them a little time to write. It's really valuable, and we've supported some great scholars through the years. So anyway, I do have many favorite Bartram moments, but there is one moment that does stand apart, and one that caught me really unawares and provided new insights into the man we know so well from our dog-eared copies of Travels. The year is 1765. William and his father John had been poking around in East Florida, and by November, they'd made their way to Fort Picolata on the St. Johns River. The fort was a Spanish-built watchtower that now belonged to Great Britain. There, Governor James Grant and John Stuart, who was the British Superintendent of Indian Affairs, were playing host to some of the most powerful men in the Southeast, the leaders of the Lower Creek or Muskogee Indian towns. These men and their ladies had traveled all the way from the Chattahoochee River to meet with the British. They were, in fact, the real and also the self-proclaimed owners of East Florida. And as we heard previously, they came by it honestly. They won it through warfare. The Bartrams took up residence in the lower tower of the crumbling fort. They had to climb a ladder to reach their sleeping chamber, and in his diary, John Bartram gave a very precise description of the fort, including those portholes supporting swivel guns. And when I read this paper before, and I wasn't going to do it, but what the heck, it's a long day, and I feel like making a funny. I've often observed this was a very historic moment because it was the first time Yankee tourists vacationed in a Florida high-rise. So there you go. Yeah. Quite a trend they started. The main purpose, and this image, as you see, one from a British map, the other from a powder horn, and we'll hear more about powder horns in a minute. The main purpose of the conference was to reaffirm peace and friendship between the Muskogee Creek Indians, to iron out trade arrangements, and more importantly, the most important thing from the British point of view, was to agree on a boundary for the new colony of East Florida so Britons could acquire land and get down to the business of making money. The Bartrams watched the discussions. They attended dinners. They saw the peace pipe smoking, the treaty signing, the ceremonial gifting of silver medals from the British to leading Mikos. They also made excursions around the fort botanizing. On one such jaunt, William Bartram nearly stepped on a rattlesnake coiled in the path, And I'll add, it's November, it's kind of cool. The snake was not about to strike him, but he promptly killed the snake and hauled it back to the fort triumphantly, as he put it, to the amazement of both the Indians and his fellow countrymen. The snake was served in several dishes that evening, and William tasted it, but could not swallow it. Now, the snake aside, we catch a glimpse of the Congress thanks to a series of powder horns carved by members of the 9th Regiment of Foot. They were there as the governor's military escort to impress the Creeks, and I am aware of 4 different picolata powder horns, 2 of them most certainly created by the same artist that produced this one, which belonged to William Sharp, and it has its own exciting history. These striking artifacts are rich in imagery that ethnohistorians really appreciate and that we can all enjoy. And there sits William Bartram among the Creek delegates at the Congress of Picolata. Yes, that is him, wearing a Quaker hat and a present of trade beads from one of the Creeks around his neck. I've spent a lot of time studying Creek Indians, these powder horns, and William Bartram. And here's the takeaway. William, at age 26, was a companion on this voyage and an understudy to his father. By that time, he was also a failed North Carolina merchant. Here, on John Bartram's expedition, William began to come into his own and began to plot his own future. He was active, inquisitive, open to new experiences. He loved the thrill of discovery and was well schooled enough to expertly record and draw his findings with a flourish that impressed everyone. He was enchanted by the cultural differences and the exotic landscape. Like many others around him, he mistakenly thought the lush Florida environment offered a new path forward for him. He would become a rich planter. As his father noted, with quite some consternation, nothing will do with Billy now, but he will be a planter upon St. John's River about 24 miles from Augustine and 6 from the fort of Picolata. This frolic of his hath drove me to great straits. Indeed. I very rarely do I feel sorry for John Bartram, but I sense his problem with his son. And I don't often think of Billy as stubborn and willful. In fact, I usually don't call him Billy as a mark of respect. But obviously he was. He was stubborn. He was mule-headed. And no doubt he was heartily encouraged by Governor Grant, who needed young men in his nearly empty colony. So John Bartram set his son up as a planter on a 500-acre land grant, complete with enslaved humans to oversee. And as with many East Florida settlers, things did not go well. Despite assistance from the older, opinionated, and capable men around him, within a few months, in an unpleasant and unhealthy situation, in poor health and incapable or unwilling to manage his newly acquired slaves, Billy hit the road, leaving it all behind. Like the rattlesnake dish, he couldn't swallow it. He headed home to Philadelphia. I do not lay all of Bartram's East Florida failure to lack of ability, to faint-heartedness, to bad location, or poor labor selection, as others then and later suggested. Rather, I think his failure lay in fast disenchantment with this vision of his future he had concocted. The gentle, mild young man, as Henry Lawrence wrote, did have strength of character and resolution enough to admit it just wasn't for him. The steamy heat of East Florida proved to be William Bartram's crucible. He was fundamentally changed and reshaped by the experience. Instead of enslaver, he began to speak out against it. His views on race and slavery are clearly laid out in an anti-slavery essay he wrote years later to his fellow Americans, in which he declared, as Matt also quoted this morning, that moral conduct constitutes true religion, and noted that black, white, red, and yellow people are equally dear to God and under his protection and favor. He spoke out against the senseless killing of animals and vowed never to kill a rattlesnake again. He would later assure George Washington's government that Indians extended magnanimity and friendship, and rhetorically asked, who has a stronger claim to this country than the Indians? He called on his fellow Americans to act with benevolence, virtue, and dignity in their dealings with Native peoples, indeed with all people and with the natural world. Those experiences in East Florida among the Creeks and the Snakes and the enslaved had an impact. His misfortune, what I think we should consider a necessary failure, transformed him and ultimately enabled him to envision a future different from any that his father or that he had previously imagined. He hatched a plan and a funding proposal to John Fothergill to do what he really wanted to do. A wild notion, according to John, and he headed south again against the advice of his family. He would travel, seeing, experiencing, discovering, describing, writing, drawing. So when I see that face staring back at me from William Sharp's Powderhorn, I see a young man who sat down among the creeks and stood up, determined to remake his life. It wasn't easy, and he stumbled. Frustration and humiliation followed, as did a good deal of introspection. William Bartram matured, found his inner strength, and came to realize and firmly embrace his core beliefs and speak out about them. And he proposed an improbable journey that changed the world's perception of him. William Bartram's wild notion of what he could and would do led to the literary masterpiece that is his Travels and produced a legacy that continues to inspire us all today. Thank you.